The new Secretary General of LOAF, that is the Francophonie organization, and that is Madame Louise Mushikiwabo. We'll be taking some time to talk about her, of course, and what should be expected. Aujourd'hui, na cravate to fit, like no cravat today. All right, so let's see what we've already been seeing on our social media platforms. The hashtag, as always, is In Focus RW. All you need to do is just add that as you tweet us tonight. Let's see what we've already been seeing so far. Habimana Bosco says that it's a good discussion. Just a few points. Number one, Mushikiwabo makes any Rwandan or African and all positive thinking individuals proud. Detractors will always be negative and irrelevant. For example, Himbaras. And he goes ahead to tweet Twajira Mungu right there and the likes. All right, another one right there from Emmanuel Bahati. My expectations, I think we have in here some issue, okay? So my expectations from her victory is that Africans would understand what it means to have one voice. I'm so proud to be a Rwandan and happy of how other nations appreciate our leaders. Of course, H.E. Kagame, more votes, i.e. high political confidence. Thank you so much for that. Let's take a look at another one right there. We have people who've been tweeting right there, and Mugisha says that despite today's hardships, we as Africans have occupied a credible victory in the way striving for self-dependence politically, economically, and social transformation. As far as OAF is concerned, the new SG should look more into youth empowerment. Of course, we need to start off with a look at this woman, Louise Mushikiwabo. Of course, she's now the Secretary General of the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie. Yes, OIF in short. And she was born on May 22nd, 1961 in Javana. And she attended primary and secondary school in Kigali. 1981, she joined National University of Rwanda and she studied a bachelor's degree in English. Of course, she did graduate in 1984. This is when one of my brothers was actually born. And she took a job as a high school teacher. And then later on, she joined University of Delaware, 1986. That is actually when I was actually being born. And she took a master's degree in languages and interpretation, specializing in French. Of course, we know how impeccable her French is. Jeune Afrique actually has listed her as most influential African personality on the continent. One of the books that she's actually co-authored is Rwanda Means the Universe. Of course, there's been a lot that has taken place after her election. We have President Paul Kagame, who actually tweeted in French. This is not actually the first time, by the way. President Kagame actually did tweet in French some time ago, talking about the facts are stubborn, and that is what he had tweeted during that time in 2014. And in this one, he was actually saying that it is actually a historic moment for us as Rwandans and Africans. And of course, what else can I actually translate here? Like, with determination, there's nothing that can actually stop us, you know? And then he goes ahead to tell Madame Louise Mushikiwabo, Félicitations, all right? There you go. Of course, so many tweets have been coming through. Let's now bring in our panelists who are going to help us analyze this particular very important topic that we have right here. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we have Emery Ziravatinya, who's actually an expert on foreign relations. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
For the first time on the program, we've been seeing you tweeting a lot, is Janine Munyeshuri, an economist. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And also, not for the first time, he's not new to this particular program, Gatete Nyiringabo, blogger and human rights lawyer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And also for the first time on this end, before we change our set, is Natalie Munyamenda, MD Next Nation Forum. Thank you for joining us on the program. First of all, the OAF, since 1970. You know, we were trying to Google a lot of facts about this organization, and we found out that actually it's been there since 1970. A lot has been happening throughout those years. But where was this organization? I'm going to start with you, Emery. Where was this organization until Madame Mushikiwabo actually put up her candidature to run for this top job in this particular office? Where was this organization?
So probably before I start on and say where probably the organization was, let me start say that I'm a bit surprised and actually impressed by your French.
Hey, okay.
And I think my colleague, just a light moment. But anyway, over and above, before I go into the nitty-gritties, personally, on a personal level, let me take the opportunity to congratulate Honorable Mushikiwabo for the new position she has been elected to. And I think that's good for Africa, that's good for Rwanda, and everyone else. But I'll go straight into the so-perceived mythologies. And many people have actually been wondering, has Rwanda been part of the part of the OIF?
Yeah.
And why Rwanda to join, to be so strong and influential in OIF right now? And of course, having at the helm a very able African daughter and African special diplomat. So it is clear to state that and to underscore that actually Rwanda was a founder member of OIF back in 1970. Yes, of course, at the international arena, you'll get to understand that from a political standpoint, economic standpoint, and social-cultural, things tend to change.
Yeah.
Change is inevitable. And of course, with regards to the national interests of particular states, sometimes you'll wave left and sometimes you'll wave right.
Yeah, but Janine, still coming to the same question,
Yeah.
where was OIF from 1970 to today? This is when some of us are even getting to know about this organization.
It was around, I guess. If you have Googled it,
Yes.
it was around. Maybe not so relevant for us or not impacting us so positively. I recall many, I would say even negative comments. You know, there has been the French summit and Labor with very not pleasant comments from President Mitterrand back then.
Yeah.
So we're just happy that we're moving forward.
Yeah, we're moving forward. Gatete, how relevant was this institution for us? How will it be relevant for us now?
The fact that you get to learn about it today and Google about it today is a sign that indeed there's something new. So the OIF has been there, but I think things are not going to be the same again in the future because it's going to change because the leader of the OIF now is not, it's someone that we recognize ourselves in.
Yeah.
The reason people didn't know about the OIF is because people used to think of it as a club, you know, of ex-heads of states doing the bidding of the French government and advancing French government's interests, sometimes at the expense of the African people.
Yeah.
And that is why they didn't have so much interest in it. But the fact that this campaign has brought all of us together, the fact that this campaign has enabled all of us to contribute, to participate, to learn about it, we have very high expectations this time.
Yeah.
And remember, she won on a ticket of African unity.
Yeah.
The entire continent came together. If you remember 4 years ago, Africa could not present a joint candidate. Therefore, they had to look elsewhere to find a candidate. And so the fact that we've all come together and give her this momentum is a testimony, or perhaps it's a bearer of hope that the OIF that we knew ends today. Today is a new day. We have a new OIF which we own as African and in which we can place our aspirations.
Natalie, how relevant do you think this institution now is? Bearing in mind that from 1970, all this time it has been there, but most of us, I know there are those who are watching us tonight who didn't even know that it actually existed, that we were actually members for this.
Well, I think, my colleagues have already said why the OIF or La Francophonie is going to have an impact now, can have an impact now. I think in the speech of Minister Louise Mushikiwabo, when she was giving thanks for the election, for being nominated, I think what she said was that she took her time to speak to African heads of state and other members of the Francophonie to find out what is it that they want to do with this organization, because I think as with the African Union reforms, there is a movement and it's both internal. Young people want to see some relevant institutions, and I think heads of state themselves want to have relevant institutions to say, how do we make the Francophonie, what is the identity of the Francophonie, and how can it be relevant to young Africans? I think it would be unfair to say that the Francophonie has never existed. I think in Francophone Africa, particularly in West Africa, Francophonie has a lot of activities, whether it's in education, whether it's in art. I think today what I believe Minister Mushikiwabo will bring is a newness, a focus, to say how can we focus the efforts of the Francophonie with most impact for Africans and for the other member states. I think that's why electing Honorable Mushikiwabo was the right decision. And the fact that she was put forth by a united Africa, I think, says a lot about where we are today in the African Union.
As a continent as well. Janine, when Louise Mushikiwabo was actually making her speech, she did mention, as alluded by Natalie, she did say that she's not going to reinvent the wheel. The only thing she's going to try to do is actually give it a new direction with the support of the member states. As an economist, economically speaking, how does Rwanda benefit from this? I've had a lot of people asking this particular question. What are we looking out for as a country, first of all?
Look, the Francophonie now is... covers a population of 1.5 billion people. So think of it, the openness we will benefit from. On the continent, we are, the majority of the Francophones live on our continent. Obviously, we already had diplomatic ties with those countries. They will only be reinforced by those multilateral venues in which we can operate together. So it's a large market. It's a large market beyond the continent. Bearing in mind Asia, bearing in mind countries like Europe, in Europe like Switzerland, bearing in mind countries like Canada, the potential is huge. The potential is huge.
But we have the African continent as well, which we all talk about that potential being huge. But yet intra-African trade still plays around 15%.
Eugene, we're living momentous times. Yeah. Minister Mushikiwabo has been elected in a time where we see the African integration just keep growing, and it will deepen. It will deepen. People used to oppose actually Francophones and Lusophones and Anglophones, and here we are, all of us, speaking more than 2, 3, 4, 5 languages. Yeah. So I hope, this is my hope, that the so-called opposition Francophone, Anglophone, and whatsoever language that we speak will be an outdated debate. And obviously, language is an instrument of not only communication, but trade. But trade. We inherited French from what? Colonization. What did they come to do? So I think something important is happening now. We are using that same language to build ourselves, to have a seat at the table, and to re-own our voice.
To re-own our voice.
To re-own our voice.
Let me bring in Emery before we get back to the other side of our panelists. Emery, diplomatically speaking, from as an expert in international relations, a lot did happen. We saw, I don't know if we could call that shuttle diplomacy, where, there was meeting like one by one. We saw Minister Louise Mushikiwabo meeting even leaders of countries where were perceived in quotes as countries where we did not have good relations with. For example, she did have to meet President Kabila of Congo. Yet we all know in the news and in media what the relations between Rwanda and Congo, has always been looking like. So what do you think did happen here? Do you sense a feeling of some compromises having been made, some rules being bent, just to ensure that we had a unanimous decision on this? What can you tell us that you think might have happened along these corridors of diplomacy to decide one candidate for the continent?
Yeah, so I think probably I'll allude and come back to compliment actually what Natalie, my good colleague, did mention about probably not reinventing the wheel. But when you want to put everything into context, you would want to come first of all and understand why the sudden change. But you need to understand that in political arena, things don't just happen without a reason, and things can never stay the same. But coming to your question, let's look at it this way. I would first of all like to go back to the economic numbers and look at the numbers. What do they portend? What do they tell us? They're telling you right now that 60% of Africans living on the African continent speak French. On the internet use, French is the 4th spoken language. By 2070, if you're looking at the numbers, we'll be having about like 650 million Africans speaking French. And actually, as you pinpoint it and look at it right now, French language is coming now south of Africa. So, but why all this? You mentioned about shuttle diplomacy. Shuttle diplomacy, simply put, is a way of trying to lobby when you've got an urgent, certain situation on the ground. But look at France right now. Before we even go to chateau diplomacy, there's something we call secret diplomacy. And probably that is what won't come to private, or maybe sometimes, I mean, so to speak, public, or maybe to the notion that maybe people can be told what's happening. But actually, when you go back, you'll be told France, and it's normal practice in diplomacy, used gentlemen like, say, for example, Maurice Levy, who used to be the former CEO for the Publis Group. And actually, whether he came here or not, that's another story altogether. But the fact is, for them to even sit down, and you can see that President Macron has already changed the game plan. Everything has changed, and now we are seeing French in another version. We are in 2018, where, of course, we know Rwanda and France has not probably normalized its diplomatic relations. We won't lie that we are enjoying cordial and warm, but we can say that we are expecting the best from this.
Out of this.
Out of this, absolutely.
Natalie, let me just jump onto you on the same matters. I mean, Madame Louise Mushikiwabo's journey to this particular position was not without any rocks and thorns. There were some critics who continually said that, no, she does not deserve this seat. One, because she comes from a country that actually, in their own opinion, was not that Francophonie. Because one, they are not even using English, French as a language of instruction. They had actually to kick it out, in quotes. Also, the culture, as far as French culture is concerned in Rwanda. Today, we do not have, the former popular French cultural center that we knew of those days. Were those reasons valid, according to those who are actually saying this? Do you think they had, their thoughts carry any water or hold any water?
Well, I'm happy to have this opportunity because I want to talk about Minister Louise, right? And the fact that she was a very strong candidate for this position. She was endorsed by heads of state, and if you look at the amount, she has been a long-standing minister. She's had a very difficult portfolio, and the minister has worked to increase relations between Francophone Africa, West Africa. She's built our diplomatic prowess in this country, and she has served this country with honor. I think as a woman in leadership, she has excelled in her position, and I think for those reasons, she is qualified as standing on her own to be Secretary General of the Francophonie. In terms of the criticism, I think it's normal. Rwanda attracts criticism for everything it does, and part of why we are so good is because we spend a lot of time not following what critics are saying, but actually doing what we should be doing. I think that that we could say things like we still have French in our constitution. A large majority of people who speak one of the two languages, whether English or French, speak French in Rwanda, and that the majority of the population speak Kinyarwanda. So we are not Francophone or Anglophone. We are Rwandan. And I think what the Francophonie brings is a certain culture and a certain openness to different parts of the world, and a common, I would say, common objectives around certain things. And I think those are things that Rwanda is a part of and will continue to be a part of. I think it's kind of a dead debate for me. And I think if we go back to why they were happy to select Minister Mushikiwabo as a candidate, she comes from a country, if we talk about Rwanda, she comes from a country where things are getting done. And heads of state in Africa want things to be, the Francophonie to be more effective and to have more impact. And what better country to field a candidate than Rwanda? And what better candidate than Minister Louise? I think that's it's very straightforward for me.
Right, very straightforward. Gatete, as a human rights lawyer, also as a blogger, you've actually been writing a lot around Madame Louise Mushikiwabo. There was also another claim that came up that actually Rwanda was pushed on the wall. In order to have Madame Mushikiwabo given the support that she got, then we had to actually sacrifice a few things here and there. And that included the allegations that, Victoire Ingabire and the other prisoners had to be freed first. Talk to me a bit about your analysis on that, how that could have been true or not true, in your opinion.
Let me take it within the context of the critics in general. There was an underlying message. The message really, from the people who were saying Louise Mushikiwabo does not deserve to be in this position, they were trying to say something, which President Macron didn't listen to, because President Kagame defines him as a head of state with an open mind. But what the French media and the French former ministers were trying to tell their president today was telling her, be careful, this woman is not going to advance the interests of France. This woman is not going to listen to you. On that point, I have to agree with them. So many times, Africans have championed people to sit at the table. But when Africans send you at the table, it's not to sit at the table and do the bidding of the people at the table. You are supposed to sit at the table to defend the interests of those who sent you.
Yes.
To be at the table. Minister Louise Mushikiwabo, the way I know her, and the way I know how this country works, and the reason I know why Africans unanimously voted for her is because they knew if she goes there, she's going to defend their interests. And those who are criticizing her, saying she doesn't deserve the position, were trying to tell the French president, this woman is going to actually defend the interest of her people, not of your. She's not like the others you've had before.
Yes.
They were right. And you will say it, that's what I hope, is that when we have a candidate, this is a candidate that is going to go there to defend the interest of Africans, the interest of even Haitians, the interest of Caribbeans who are in the Francophonie. She's not going to do the bidding of France. And on that, I agree with the French journalists and the French nostalgics of the France-Afrique, because that's what the France-Afrique means, is to have African leaders who would frequently meet with the French president to receive instructions on what they're supposed to implement in their own countries for the grandness and the glory of France. Yeah. And they were telling him, be careful, this woman is not one of those you're used to. Yeah. She's coming there with an African agenda. She's coming there with the agenda of the people, of the young people of Africa who's the majority of the people who speak French. And so when you talk about Ingabire and so many other released people, in the mind of these people who are writing it, they believe France can tell Rwanda who to free and who to jail. It is not the case, and it's never been the case. Since 1994, in this country, we don't do the bidding of France. Anyone else who's been doing the bidding of France and expects to have a position, and many people have, to have the position in the UN, to have the position in Francophonie, to have the position in international organizations, doing the bidding of France, of superpowers, to be promoted at what they call a visible minority, to be a black person at the table, but you're not actually representing the interest of the people you come from. Yeah. This is a paradigm shift, Eugene. And so basically the criticism did not overtly show its true colors, but that's what they were trying to say. And indeed, it is true, she's there to advance the interest of the people.
If I want to interrupt, I also wanted to say that I think the big challenge is that Africa has continued we are infantilized as Africans. Yeah. So if Minister Louise becomes the Secretary General of the Francophonie, France must have accepted. There must have been some bargaining for it to happen. Yeah. And I think that is an argument, even ourselves as Africans, we need to move away from. It was very disappointing for me to continue to see that discussion, because Africa does not need to be invited to the table. We are the large majority of the Francophone people, and we have to have a say in this organization, and therefore we do not need to be invited to the table, whether it's a calculation between Macron or an agreement between the presidents. That's not how it works. Yeah. She was a qualified candidate, and she's going to defend the interests of Africa. And I think in that sense, Africa is at the table, does not need to be invited to the table, and therefore our interests are important to this organization. I think we should step away from this circular discussion about who orchestrated her win.
And who pulls which particular strings. Yes. Jenny,
I want to agree with what Natalie said and slightly disagree with Gatete. We are opposing the interests of France with those of Francophonie and those of Africa, actually. I think it's the great interest of France now to work and listen and give room and space to our countries and our continent. First of all, there is no Francophonie without Africa. There is no Francophonie. Natalie just reminded us in the beginning that the way she knows and remembers Francophonie is through art and literature. It's true, the Centre Culturel Français. This is how I also learned and actually improved my French. Yeah. But look, even in terms of art, in literature, who are the greatest contemporary writers in French? Yes. They're not French people. Yes. So there is no Francophonie content without non-French Francophones. Right. We make Francophonie, we do. It's good that today we have a political voice and that we will give proper content, which is not French only.
Right.
So I think it's just a convergence of interests. France's interests and ours do converge.
We have that conversion.
They do converge.
Yeah. But let's talk about the geopolitics now.
Probably if you may allow, before I go into the geopolitics,
Yes.
I think my sister is bringing in a very good point here. When you look at the contributors of the French content especially, I'd like to go into one person called Léopold Sédar Senghor. And when you look at Léopold Sédar Senghor, what he's done within the milestone, within the whole landscape of the French language, we will need to go to books, but we don't have time for now here.
Yeah.
But let me go back to actually what Gatete and Natalie tried to bring out here, and it's clear. From a personal opinion, I won't even look at the issues of the Rwanda government releasing prisoners and everything. To me, it has nothing to do with OIF. Those are two separate issues. Yeah. You need to be clear on the table and look at the Rwandan constitution. His Excellency the President has got a presidential decree. He's got a prerogative within the constitutional framework to look from the Prison Act.
Yeah.
And at one point, I do know that he did, but I mean, the Rwandan government did release almost 30,000.
Right. And I think that is really clear. But now the question is, where does the election of Madame Louise Mushikiwabo to the OIF, the appointment of President Paul Kagame as the chairperson of the AU, we have the Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly coming from Rwanda, and other major, positions across the globe. Where does this put us, geopolitically speaking? When it comes to decisions that are to be made from a regional point of view, from geopolitical perspective, where do you think this puts us? Are we now able to stand out as a country and say, and call out countries that are within the region and say, hey guys, you know what, we don't like what you're doing there, and we are giving you this particular statement so that you can actually come back to track. Do you think we can now do that as a country?
So coming back to the table, I heard you mention His Excellency, you mentioned the Honorable Mushikiwabo, you also mentioned Dr. Ujira Sheuja at the East African community, but also you also need to add up the whole cream of cake, because we've got someone very important, Commander in General of the UNAMIS in Darfur.
Yes.
So now, when you put all that together, you start looking at what is the position, what is the value, what is the influence of Rwanda at the international arena.
Yes.
When you use a metric, or maybe when you use a tool to look at a foreign policy analysis, three things come into play. For sure, each country has got national interest, and you'll be looking at national interest from the act of one, political, economics, and social cultural.
Yeah.
But within the metric, there are three things that actually they use. That is the image, the prestige, and the status.
Yeah.
Now, it does come on the fore table to let you understand that in 2018, in 21st century, where we have Rwanda now, and I like that my colleagues here brought it out clearly. With regards to critics, for example, you don't answer them with a question they're trying to, or maybe try to go back to their criticism.
You show them.
You work. I think that's the most important thing. So where Rwanda is right now with regards to all this diplomatic influence is a show and assurance of actually that probably what you're trying to put on the table is irrelevant. Either come on board, join them. It's never been a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Okay? Come and we work together as Rwandese. So at the international stardom, what does it portend for Rwanda? I won't lie to you. When you're at the table, and I think they brought it out clearly, we are a partner. Times yesteryears of zero-sum game are gone.
They're gone.
It is a non-zero-sum game whereby now, if it is OIF, and I won't lie to you, France is coming in as a bigger brother, yes, but it's got its national interest. But also Rwanda, Haiti, as it was brought out clearly, Canada and the rest also do. But there is a common consensus that actually we can move as an institution, we can move as an outfit, and we can speak as one voice. And having Louise Mushikiwabo, Honorable, being on top there is nice, because one, as an African lady and Rwandese, we stand to earn a lot as far as Rwanda is concerned and as far as Africa is concerned, so that we stop being a reservoir of raw materials that go there and we just remain clandestine.
Can I come in?
Yes, on geopolitics. Yes.
Coming back to your question about the fact that we have a number of people who are representing Africa
On an international level.
therefore we're going to start giving lessons, it defeats the purpose. As a matter of fact, we are not there as bosses of anyone. We are there as servants. It is a privilege.
Yep.
With privilege comes responsibility. The reason these individuals have been trusted is precisely because, again, they're going to serve the interests of those who put their trust in them.
Yeah.
A Rwandan telling someone what to do defeats the whole purpose of what being Rwandan means, and defeats the purpose of what the trust is, betrayal of the trust. Because the reason you have people who are in positions of power in international organizations telling off countries is because they're actually just they're not speaking on their own.
Yeah.
They are parroting messages that have been put in their mouths by those who, they have masters who control them.
Yeah.
In this case, the only people who control Louise Mushikiwabo are the people who put their trust. She's employed. Yeah. She's an employee. She's a servant. Therefore, I don't see her giving lessons to her master, because her master is who? It's not France. It is the African people who gave their mandate to her.
It's the African people who give...
So unless she's telling off France,
yeah,
then maybe and that's not how we conceive diplomacy and international relations and geopolitics. We conceive it from a place of humility and of learning. We're all learners. We know, we're still trying to figure out a few things. She doesn't have... It would be, actually, that's why, if you have mentioned all these persons that have been put in these positions, the only reason they've been put there is because they're trusted by the Africans, that if we put these people here, they're going to work with us, respect us, and advance our interests, not come back to give us lessons.
Give us lectures.
I want to jump in this discussion. Gatete raised very important points. Yeah. But see, you remind us all the time about the criticism and how we respond to criticism.
Yeah.
But we don't respond to criticism because it matters above everything. What I think President Kagame has done consistently is serving his constituency. So when our interests are not served, he will step in and say something. And this is what also Louise Mushikiwabo has been doing. Yeah. But we don't live for that. Yeah. We don't live to go against so and so and so. No, we're here on a continent and actually on a global scene to find allies, to build our countries as we work with others. So, for me, what is very important in this discussion is to remember, although there is this Western gaze on us, we don't live for it. We know it's there, but we always have to remind ourselves who is our constituency. And this is consistently, Louise has served this country and actually this continent. And it's not a random fact that she was supported and backed by the entire continent. It's not a random element that President Kagame also is now chairing the African Union, and that this election also happens as he's chairing the African Union. It just shows that when a leader does his job, serve his people, things happen.
Things happen.
These things happen.
I also want to add, I absolutely agree that...
Natalie, yes. I also want you to share with us, what do you think are going to be Madame Louise Mushikiwabo's biggest hurdles moving forward, in your opinion?
Okay, so let me just finish my thought. I think I agree with Janine that we have to, we're always, Africans in general, always having to respond to, you know, who put you there? Are you going to have to defend someone else's interests? Actually, I was reading a lot of comments from young Africans in the West Africa who were disappointed because they viewed our President Kagame, as someone who is basically their shield against Western imperialism. So he's their superhero. And what does it mean that their superhero is now shaking hands with President Macron and fielding a candidate for the Francophonie? So there's a bit of angst because, as Gatete was saying, they're used to their leaders who go and have to give account as presidents. You know, if we even talk about the long history of the franc CFA, for example. So I think we have to re-educate ourselves to view us as people who are at the table because we are at the table, not because someone brought us to the table. And because we're at the table, because we deserve to be at the table, President Kagame is not a servant of President Macron when he fields a candidate for a French-speaking organization. And whether he speaks French or not is irrelevant. I think that's why it's very important for me, I think for young Africans to see President Kagame as a leader and to know that he is responding to African needs. Okay, and in terms of the hurdles, I think for me, Minister Louise has already said what her goals will be. She will focus on youth employment and other things. And I think for me, as is for the case with large organizations, internal wrangles are the big issue. Especially if you're shifting culture, if you're expecting more from people, if you're slimming down, reducing costs, all these things, if you're putting checks and balances, it's going to be difficult. And I think Minister Louise is really, I think she's she's a people person. She's able to rally people around herself, and I think she's learned well from President Kagame. So I'm not really worried about that. But I think for me, it would be more internal than external.
Right, more internal than external. Gatete, what do you think are going to be her most difficult moments? And if she had your ears, what would you be telling her so that she can be able to deal with those particular challenges that you're going to point out?
At Francophonie, they talked a lot about the rayonnement de la langue française. That means the thriving of French language. But we're no longer in an era where people speak languages to hear themselves out and feel happy about themselves and use grand vocabulary.
Yes.
We're going to speak French only if it's in our economic interest. Only if French is going to allow trade, if French is going to create jobs, if French is going to bring peace, if French is going to bring security. French is like mathematics, it's a tool. A language is only a tool that enables you to do something else. So you put the language at the service of something else.
Yeah.
The reason in Eastern Africa, people had not heard of Francophonie is because they had not maybe effectively traded with Francophonie. So for French language to thrive, which is what I wish, it's going to take for people in that space to do business, to create proper cross-border markets, to innovate together. To transact, to exchange culturally, to broker peace.
I disagree. I think allow me to disagree with you, Gatete. I think for me, if the Francophonie is going to have an impact, the Francophonie should go where it can have the most impact. So it shouldn't be reinventing what already exists within the other regional blocks. I think Francophonie has to come and fill a void where it's necessary. Are they important spaces within education that they can plug into? Are they important situations in trade that they can plug into? Can they facilitate certain things, whether it's in research or in culture? I do not think that Francophonie should be competing with blocks like the African Union and other blocks in the Asian markets, because that then becomes redundant. Then we have Francophonie saying the same thing, same panels, same projects as everything else. I think
so they should look for the gaps.
She's already identified these gaps, and I think that she should continue on her quest to be able to fill those gaps. That's my opinion. I think we have to get away from this. Or something looks good, let's do it. Let's plug the holes where you think you can be most effective, and in that way, then the Francophonie will serve the interest of African.
Right.
And actually, probably not necessarily disagreeing with Gatete, but actually just trying to compliment you.
There's no problem if you disagree with Gatete.
No, I mean, it's fine.
Diplomats.
But look at you. But actually, I think Nathalie is bringing in a very good point, because now, as I look at this outfit, as I look at this institution, I think what comes out most is what do we share? What are the values? What is going to make us one more? I mean, you're part of the game. So it's not a question of just going out there and saying maybe let's see how we can be better more than the NAFTA or maybe the ASEAN, or that's not the point. The point is actually to come back and redress and look at the notes and say how far have we fared from 1970? Now, all the member states, have we been on the table as equals? If that's not the case, because I'll give you an example, and sometimes it's not a very good example. I'm proud to be an African, but it's not good to see one of the African states here who had a pact with France. And actually, it is there, it's his books, I'm not inventing it. And they did agree within, after that, and that was after 1960, when these guys got their independence. And they said, you see, from the ground, going down 6 meters down, that belongs to you. But from 6 meters going down belongs to France. That is not how you trade off. So in 2018, when you're looking at OIF, what I'm expecting, and and I'm seeing that actually Honorable Louise Mushikiwabo is going to do a good job in terms of like, look at her 4 critical pillars. And I think that's where she needs to put her more effort and make sure that actually that's where things are. I trust her emotional intelligence. I trust that she's a seasoned political and diplomat who has seen it all.
Yeah.
So it's a question of having this political maturity and composure,
yeah,
and say, where do you go? Because she's not representing Rwandese only.
Right.
She's representing the bloc.
Right.
So how do you do those trade-offs?
Right.
It's going to be hard.
How does
But
she
it
do
has to
those
be done.
trade-offs, Janine, as an economist, as I go to read the tweets right now? How does she deal with that? Because we understand we want to see Madame Louise Mushikiwabo as an African herself trying to bring in those, things that we all believe in her on. How does she change this kind of mindset? I mean,
It will be gradual. There won't be shock. I don't think she's a person who shocks systems.
yeah,
And this is how we've been also operating in Rwanda.
yeah,
So she has already the trust of the heads of states.
yeah.
She will let people gradually change.
She will let people move with the change gradually. Let's now read some of the tweets that have been coming through via the hashtag InFocusRW. Geopolitical and international status is that due to highest performance of Rwandan candidates, whether AFB, that is African Development Bank, UNAMIS, East Africa, or the OIF, makes the world a better place. Rwanda is about making a difference in the world to humanity. Thank you so much, Habimana, for that particular tweet. Let's take a look at another one right here from Shuti Mbabazi. Says Africa came together to unanimously vote for a fellow African for the first time in years. Yego Gatete being tagged.
It's not
right
the first
there.
time.
It's not the first time.
No.
Tell us, what was the
We had
other
Dr.
time?
Tedros.
Yeah?
We just had Dr. Tedros also elected at the WHO.
Yes, so these are very interesting times for Africa.
Absolutely.
Now. Absolutely. We have Mukishe who comes on and says, if Rwanda was one of the founder states, where is impact seen of OIF to Rwanda? What difference does it make today to Rwanda and African relevance political architecture? Okay, so I'm going to try and just cook that into my mind. I don't know if you got it. Did you get it? You want to jump on it? Who wants to respond to that?
I think
Not it.
an organization is as relevant as you make it. I think
Yes.
it's a good point to question the relevance of the Francophonie, and I think that's why Minister Louise has her job cut out for her, and I think she's up to the challenge.
Yeah, she's up to the challenge. And this one from Aspire Business Solutions. This is priceless. The word in that song are a balm to my soul. As you can see, Madame Mushikiwabo just taking it nice and easy right there. Now, there's a very important thing that is actually also on the table right here tonight before we leave this particular place. She leaves big shoes to be filled. As the portfolio for the Minister of Foreign Affairs is concerned. And of course, there's no bias in this list right here, but of course these are some of the top contenders possible, because President Kagame is the appointing authority and he has the right to choose who he's going to choose. But for the sake of speculation or for the sake of what people are saying, let's just try and take a look. Ambassador Olivier Nduhungirehe is one of those who probably is being seen as person who's going to replace Madame Mushikiwabo. He's actually the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Regional Cooperation and EAC Affairs. And of course, he was Rwanda's ambassador in Belgium. He was also advisor to PS Ministry of Trade and Industry and Commerce, was part of the Business Law Reform Cell at the Ministry of Justice, and he's also served as Deputy Permanent Representative and Permanent Mission of Rwanda to the UN. Of course, let's also take a look at another one is here, right here, Ambassador Clever Gatete. I mean, Minister of Infrastructure, currently served as Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, named African Finance Minister of the Year by Global Capital, and of course, he has served as an economist at UNDP Kigali, served as President's personal representative to NEPAD. 2003, served as Secretary General and Secretary to the Treasury. 2005, became Rwanda's ambassador to the UK, Ireland, and Iceland. And of course, he's also served as Deputy Governor and Governor for the National Bank of Rwanda. Let's take a look at another one right there. Aha, Ambassador Valentine Rugwabiza. She's a businesswoman and politician, serves as Rwanda's permanent representative to the United Nations since 2016. In 2005 to 2013, she served as Deputy DG of the World Trade Organization. She also has served as CEO of Rwanda Development Board from 2013 to 2014, and also served as Minister for East African Community from 2014 to 2016. In 2015, was named as one of Jeune Afrique's 50 powerful women in Africa. This, I think, is alongside Madame Louise Mushikiwabo, and also she was a member of the East African Legislative Assembly from 2012 to 2017. Let's take a look at another one who's actually being projected. Possible. I mean, this is not cast on stone. We have no say on this, but this is what is being said out there in the streets. Member of Senate of Rwanda, and of course, he was the 4th Secretary General of East African Community, former Minister of Health for Rwanda, former Member of Parliament, and of course, former Ambassador to the United States of America, and former Presidential Special Advisor to the Great Lakes region, and also he's a long-serving member of Gavi Board. Ladies and gentlemen, your wild guess. Let me start with you here.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much. And I was just looking at what you've just shared with us as far as the possible nominee could be. But actually, my take is this: that it does show us that actually Rwanda has no inept of political and diplomatic personalities. Yeah. So to speak, I think personally, one, it is the prerogative of the president. Yes. He's the one who does what. That should be clear. Let's not even discuss.
Very clear. Yes.
Okay. 2, it is important to discern and understand that whoever is going to come into the shoes of Louise Mushikiwabo, as you said, those are big shoes. How he or she is going to do it, we are yet to sit and wait. Yeah. But what is important is that whoever this personality, Rwanda has got very able men and women. That is not a question. We won't need to figure out who that has to be. Yeah. We won't even question it. Right. The question is, how do you take it from there? That's a question for me. And because if you go back to 2012 to look at the amendment of the foreign policy of Rwanda, and which rests on 6 pillars, Mushikiwabo has done a tremendous job, and in a manner with so much humility and political composure, as far as having that finesse with diplomacy. Now the next person has to realign. Doesn't need to be Mushikiwabo, yes, but has to be within the context of how you front Rwandan interests and African interests at the end of the day.
Perfect. Janine?
I'm not speculating. Yes. I'm very happy with whoever the president chooses. Yeah. And I wanted to add to what he said, that the fights that Mushikiwabo in her position fought are won. The geopolitical context is very different from that we had in 2012. Whether with our other fellow African countries or with the rest of the world. Yeah. So it's a different Rwanda. It's a different Rwanda. So it won't be Louise Mushikiwabo bis. It will be somebody else, and I'm very much looking forward to our next minister.
Right. Absolutely. Gatete.
To quote a great Rwandan man who is actually the appointing authority for this position, everybody's got their shoes. Yeah. The next person will bring a new perspective, and it's all for the best. So I'm not worried, like my predecessors have said, I'm not worried about whether they're going to be Louise. They're going to be another person, and that we look forward, in fact, to that too. And number 2, it's not really part of the political discipline of Rwanda or any useful to actually preempt nominations, political nominations. Yeah. It's not even, first of all, if we could sit here all night and drop names, it's not going to change anything. But like my predecessors have said, we have a rich list
where we can actually get
of able women and men. Yeah. And we're waiting for the next person, and we expect them to be themselves, to be someone else.
Right. How about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I think our president is quite wise in this regard, and one of the things I admire about His Excellency is that when Minister Louise started, she was not the Minister Louise we know today. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, that President Kagame sees potential, and he sees, and then he gives you a crash course in the kind of leadership this country needs at the time, which today, as my colleague said, is quite different than when Minister Louise came to become minister. So I'm looking forward to see what the president has on his mind and how that will impact our foreign relations, which today can only go higher.
Right. Perfect. Of course, These are just some of those speculations. Of course, we know that the president has the prerogative and, of course, the final say on who actually takes this particular position. Listen, we have actually compiled some quotes, actually memorable quotes, not all of them, but just some of them of Madame Louise Mushikiwabo. We're going to be leaving you and loving you with them so that you can just be able to see some of the things that she stood for, especially when it comes to Africa, the continent. From the controls team, I just want to request that we play those particular quotes from Madame Louise Mushikiwabo, then we'll come to wrap it up right here on In Focus.
For Africa, this is a time of result. This is a time of implementation. This is a time of focus, but especially a time for genuine, serious service to the people of our continent. Our continent wants to be independent, not just with our flags and national anthems. We also want to be independent financially. We have what it takes as a continent. So if we want to be independent, some things have to change. Now, President Kabila staying in power is none of Rwanda's business.
There's a feeling out there with many of us that it is not politically correct. It's not sexy to say nice things about your country and your government. You know, you kind of have to, you know, some people wrongly call it neutral. You know, you kind of have to reserve some negativity towards your own so that you look, you know, like a smart, worldly educated person. That's an issue to be addressed. I disagree with that.
How do we address that?
That the change that is wanted on this continent is irreversible at this point. We have reached a point where we can only go forward.
Une édition spéciale sur Madame Louise Mushikiwabo, le nouvel secrétaire général sur l'organisation de la francophonie. Yes, c'est fini. Bonjour à tout le monde.
Bonsoir.
Bonne
All
nuit.
right. Bonsoir.
Let me be alone. Please, let's do it.